The hangar echoed with laughter, but it wasn't the warm, joyful kind. No, this was the sharp, cruel laughter that erupts when the powerful find a new way to humiliate someone they see as beneath them. Huddled in the corner of the massive aerospace facility, Ethan Cole clutched his mop handle, his only shield against the ridicule. His hands were calloused, his overalls stained from years of hard, honest labor. He wasn't even supposed to be here during the high-profile test runs, but over time had become a lifeline. Ever since his wife passed away 3 years ago, it was just him and his little girl, Lily, and tonight of all nights was a big one. The company's CEO, Veronica Steele, was here. They called her the Ice Queen of Aviation, the youngest, fiercest, and most intimidating executive in the industry. He was inspecting a brand new prototype helicopter, a marvel of engineering worth millions. The air buzzed with the flash of cameras and the hushed whispers of investors who had flown in from all over the world. Then disaster struck. The helicopter, the pride of the company, just sputtered. A hiss of smoke escaped from the engine. Panic set in. Mechanics in clean uniforms scrambled, shouting technical jargon, but nothing worked. The grand unveiling was turning into a grand failure. Veronica's voice, sharp and cold, cut through the chaos. "What is happening? Why isn't it starting?" Her chief engineer, a man with decades of experience, could only mumble about a faulty ignition system. Veronica's jaw tightened. Unbelievable. "I have the international press here, investors from Tokyo and London, and this is the best my team can do." She spun around, her frustration boiling over, and that's when her icy blue eyes landed on Ethan. He was just standing there, awkwardly by his supply cart, watching the scene unfold. "What are you staring at, Janitor?" She snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. "Thinking you can fix it?" The crowd chuckled, eager to join in on the mockery, then felt a hot flush of shame creep up his neck. He looked down at his worn boots, wanting to disappear. But then, something stirred inside him. It was a flicker of the same stubborn pride that had carried him through the darkest days after losing his wife. He lifted his chin and met her gaze. "Actually," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "I might." The hangar fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Veronica tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips. "You might. Oh, this is rich." She crossed her arms, every inch the powerful CEO amused by the little guy. "Tell you what, hero, if you can get this helicopter running before my so-called experts do, I will kiss you right here in front of everyone." A fresh wave of laughter erupted. Cameras, smelling a spectacle, swung towards Ethan. He felt his ears burn, but he held his ground. "I'm not asking for a kiss," he said calmly. "Just a chance to help." There was something in his tone, a quiet confidence, a lack of fear that silenced the room again. Even Veronica seemed taken aback for a second. "Fine," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Go on, show us what the janitor can do," with every eye in the room on him. Ethan walked towards the multi-million-dollar machine and climbed into the cockpit. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. As the engineers and executives watched in disbelief, he didn't panic. He just listened. He ran a gentle hand along the controls, his eyes scanning every dial, every switch. You see, what they didn't know was that for 10 years, Ethan had been one of the top aviation mechanics in this very company. He'd helped design engines like this one. He knew its every secret, its every hum and purr. That was before the budget cuts. Before he was laid off, deemed unnecessary by the same CEO now watching him with a mocking smile. The faint, acrid smell of burnt wiring was all he needed. "You're flooding the auxiliary fuel line," he murmured to himself. He popped open a side panel that the other mechanics had overlooked. With movements born of long practice, he rewired a loose connection, found a stray tool to tighten a critical bolt, and expertly adjusted a tiny pressure valve. Sweat beaded on his forehead, tracing a line down his temple. The whispers in the crowd grew from mocking to curious. 5 minutes. That's all it took. Ethan leaned back and pressed the ignition switch. The engine didn't just sputter, it roared to life. Smooth, powerful, perfect sound that filled the hangar. The rotor blades began to spin, gracefully at first. Then, with increasing speed and force, a beautiful, deadly dance overhead. The crowd gasped. Veronica's eyes, wide with shock, followed the blades. The very machine her million-dollar team had declared a failure. the janitor had just fixed. In 5 minutes, Ethan calmly climbed down, wiping his greasy hands on his jumpsuit. He looked directly at the stunned CEO. "It was just a small pressure issue," he said, his voice even. "Sometimes it's not about the money. It's about listening to the machine." The silence that followed was heavier than the helicopter's roar. Slowly, Veronica walked towards him, the arrogant smirk completely gone, replaced by something else. Disbelief. How? How did you know that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I used to work here," Ethan replied, a hint of old sadness in his voice. "In engine design. Before you took over. Before budget cuts made me unnecessary." A hush fell over the hangar. You could see a flicker of shame in Veronica's eyes. She remembered the mass layoffs. Hundreds of names on a list, faceless numbers she'd cut to improve the bottom line. She'd always told herself it was just business. But standing here, face to face with the man who had just saved her career, saved her company from utter humiliation, it suddenly felt very, very personal. Her expression softened. A memory clicked into place. "You're Ethan Cole," she whispered, the name coming back to her from an old personnel file. "You were one of our best." He simply nodded. Taking a deep breath, Veronica turned to face the stunned reporters and her own team. Her voice was strong again, but this time it was filled with a newfound respect. "This man," she announced, "just saved our project, and he saved our reputation. I owe him an apology." The crowd watched, mesmerized, as the powerful CEO extended her hand to the janitor. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then took it, his calloused hand meeting hers in a firm shake. The mocking laughter of minutes ago was a distant memory, replaced by a wave of genuine applause. Veronica leaned in, her voice just a whisper for him. "It's about that deal," she said, a faint, embarrassed smile on her face. "I believe I owe you a kiss." Ethan let out a quiet, tired chuckle. It was the first real smile he'd had all night. "You don't owe me anything, ma'am," he said. "Just maybe a chance to work again." For the first time all night, Veronica Steele didn't just smirk. She laughed. A warm, genuine laugh. "Mr. Cole," she said, "I think I can do much better than that." 2 weeks later, Ethan Cole walked into that same hangar. But this time, he wasn't carrying a mop. He was wearing a crisp new uniform and stitched over the pocket in neat white letters was his name. Ethan Cole, Chief Mechanical Advisor. His daughter, Lily, ran ahead of him, her little braids bouncing as she pointed excitedly. "Daddy, look! Your name is on the door!" Across the floor, Veronica watched them. The ice in her eyes had melted, replaced by a quiet admiration. When Ethan's gaze met hers, she gave him a real smile. "Welcome back, Mr. Cole," she said. They never spoke of that night again. They didn't have to. But everyone in that company remembered it. It was the night the janitor fixed the impossible machine. The night a powerful CEO learned that a person's true worth is unmeasured by their title or their salary, but by the skill in their hands and the strength in their heart. Never, ever underestimate those who seem to have fallen. They might just be waiting for their moment to rise again, stronger and wiser than before, ready to fly higher than anyone ever expected. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.